Tesla does not want to see somebody put together a bot army, and Tesla probably doesn't want to see the bots used for various other things.
While many of us are excited about Tesla's future returns with its dominance in electric vehicles and energy, we're also wondering what might happen to Tesla's stock if their Robotaxi business or their Tesla bot business become reality. What if both become a reality? Up until now, other than ARK Invest, few have done the work to detail out the potential value of full self-driving software and autonomy. Our guest today will dive deep into one such model, a model he calls the Cern model for Tesla, a conceived estimate of Robotaxi network. The Cern model shows what if values for Tesla's FSD and autonomy of $329 billion today and $9.4 trillion in 2035. He's also done the same thing to work out the potential value of Tesla's humanoid robot opportunity, calling it the Boundless Optimus Transformation at Scale, or BOTS model for Tesla. The BOTS model shows mind-blowing what-if values, as every bot produced could add about $300,000 to Tesla's market value. Don't believe him? Well, let's go through his assumptions and you input your own. Cern is a certified financial accountant who at one time managed a growth stock mutual fund. He was able to get that fund's performance to be ranked in the top 2% of all funds. He's been running his own investment advisory firm called Brilliant Advice for over 20 years, providing wealth management services. Welcome, Cern. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on, Herbert. It's great to be here.
I want to ask you, most people are very familiar with valuing Tesla based on the energy business and the electric vehicle business. And some people think that bots and Robotaxi are kind of way out in the future. What's your thought of how could it impact Tesla's valuation?
Well, that's the very thing that I wanted to explore. We've heard Elon talk about for years now about the potential for autonomy and also now the potential for humanoid robots. And he has always said that it's going to be an exciting future. And I wanted to explore that a little bit more deeply to find out for myself.
Exactly. And one of the things that Elon has said, and I know you pointed this out, is that at one point he said the value of Tesla is primarily on the basis of autonomy. And you think that's going to be the main driver of our value. What do you think he meant when he said that?
Well, I think he has talked very clearly about how electric vehicles with autonomy will be utilized far more than automobiles are today, perhaps up to 5 times more. And so that is something that I wanted to model out and see what that might mean for Tesla at scale. And I think I've come up with some very interesting numbers.
Yeah.
I originally posted this on X on July 24th. And since then, I've sharpened my pencil a little bit more, and my numbers now are actually quite a bit higher than my original post.
Yeah. What I like about what you're doing is you created this model and you've made a bunch of assumptions. You need to make a bunch of assumptions in order to get here. And you're saying here's the model is what you're really showing, and let people. And today we're going to go through each assumption, and I might have something different than you, but I can plug it in. I might change it a little bit, but you've set up the model, which is what I like. So let's start off with this tweet. Obviously, Elon saw what you were doing. I think when you tweeted up this model for Robotaxi, we'll go through that first. James Dalma replied saying, "This is fantastic. He really liked the way you set this up." Elon replied to him saying, "You understand, but few do." And then you replied back to Elon as well. So tell me about what happened here.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. I wasn't expecting Elon to reply to this tweet. He didn't reply to my tweet directly, but certainly what James had written.
Yeah.
And I think clearly this is something now that is coming closer and closer. Certainly with Elon's full self-driving demo on Friday, I think a lot of people now are more excited about the potential for this. So that the timing is right, I think, to examine this more closely.
Absolutely. Okay, let's do it. Let's examine more closely. So we're going to be able to show folks here real, spreadsheets that you've created, and for each one of these, let's walk me through the assumptions you made, and just tell me the story of how this business model will come together.
Yeah, and I think I would just like to say at the outset that all my assumptions will probably be proven wrong. But the important thing here is to build a model so that we can go through and test different assumptions and change them and see how things look. And so the first assumption that we want to make is look at the structure of revenue for Tesla. And for Robotaxi, it's likely to be at least two different lines of revenue. One is the sale, the subscription of the full self-driving software. And I'm assuming that instead of selling it, that they're just going to offer it as a monthly subscription. And initially in this model, I've got a $200 price per month for the FSD, which is about where it is now. So on an annual basis, that's $2,400 per vehicle per year. And then the next slice of the revenue opportunity is the amount that Tesla could receive based on the fares, the distance traveled times the number of vehicles. And so taking a look at that, I assume initially that each robotaxi would operate 20 hours per day, but only generate revenue about 28% of that time. And the reason I came up with that number is I was trying to essentially back into a nice round number of revenue miles per year of 60,000.
Mhm.
And so if the car travels about 30 miles an hour on average and drives 167 miles per day, that's 5,000 miles a month and a magical 60,000 miles per year. That seems entirely reasonable to me. And if anything, it might be low. If the number of trips per day are 16, then that's an average of 10 miles per trip. Now, maybe the average number of trips is 32, and therefore the average miles per trip is 5. That's certainly possible. Initially in this model, I ignored having a base fare. We'll explore that in a minute. But if we look at a fare cost per mile of 30 cents, and I think
Mhm.
ARK Invest in their model is about 25. So I was just being a little bit more conservative here. I think initially it'll be quite a bit higher than that. But this is looking at things at scale. And so each robotaxi only generates about $50 per day under these assumptions, or
Mhm.
$18,000 per year. And so the
Yeah.
combination of that plus FSD is about $20,400 per vehicle per year for Tesla. And
Okay,
if we
this
go
is
to the
very, very
next,
conservative. Yeah. Before we get there, just my reaction is I
yeah,
think this is quite conservative. I can see that you really, took the number of hours per day. The part that's confusing me a little bit. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. This is what Tesla will get, but what? How much will the actual, the owner of the car get? Like, what is this breakdown of percentage of who gets what? Or is this 100% going to Tesla?
yeah, actually, we'll see that on the next screen, Herbert.
Okay. All
And
right.
we'll explore also a little bit more in detail in terms of what fleet operators might be looking at. So on this screen, actually, the top part appears to be cut off. I assume that Tesla would share 70%. There it is.
Mhm.
70% of the robotaxi fare revenue, not the FSD part, but the fare
Okay.
revenue
Okay.
with the fleet operators. And a fleet operator could be an individual, I suppose, with one vehicle. Although fleet operation also implies more than just putting your car in a robotaxi network. It's cleaning, it's maintaining, there may be some software parts to it as well, although I think Tesla will likely provide most of that part. But anyway, I'm assuming that Tesla will share 70%. So the payments to fleet operators are over $12,000. And I assume some other operating costs of about 1,000. So the total cost of revenue of about 13.6, and that brings their gross profit per robotaxi down to about 6,700, about a
Per
33%
year,
gross margin per
per
year.
car.
Right.
That's pretty
And so
good.
this fixation on gross margins today when they sell a vehicle seems
Yeah.
perhaps a bit misplaced in this world.
Yeah. Think about that. Almost $7,000 to Tesla per year for sharing the car ownership with some other, Tesla owner like me, and that you're still going to make 7,000, close to 7,000 a year ongoing. I mean, yeah, in 4 years you paid for the cost of the car, and it keeps
That's
going.
right. Yeah. And so there's also a scenario, I think, where Tesla actually keeps a large number of
Yeah.
vehicles in their own fleet, I think, to seed
Yeah.
certain markets. So in that case, the profitability is even higher if they're not giving 70%. to the fleet operator. That fleet operator in that case is them. And then I just worked that through the rest of the financial statement to look at net income, and it's $3,700 per vehicle. When I did the initial model, this number was 2,400 per vehicle. So I've refined my
Mhm.
numbers a little bit, and it's quite a bit higher now. And again, I think these assumptions, as we'll see in a second, are quite low. And then I just wanted to take a look at what would the value of each robotaxi potentially be to Tesla if we use a valuation multiple of 30. So the 3,745 times 30, essentially a PE multiple, if you will, would
Mhm.
mean that each robotaxi to Tesla is worth $112,000 in market value. Now, this isn't a discount cash flow model. It's not a present value of the cash flows. If this number may not materialize for 5 or 10 years from now, but at least it gives you some estimate of what it might look like once robotaxis are out there operating.
Can you explain
And
that a
then
little bit? Because what you calculated here is per year per robotaxi, and then when you did the valuation, you did a P of 30, but then you then said something about that it could be multiple years. So how did you do that?
well, correct. The net income per year under these set of assumptions is just under $4,000 per robotaxi.
Right.
But then I'm just trying to create an estimate for what that might mean for Tesla's market value if you
Hmm.
applied a PE multiple, so a price to earnings multiple. And that takes that annual income and turns it into a value that investors might see.
Okay.
Um, and then at the bottom of this is whatever assumption you would like to make about how large the fleet will be.
Hmm.
At 1 million robotaxis, the potential value to Tesla is 112 billion. At
Wow.
10 million robotaxis, it's
Yeah.
1.1 trillion. And if there's ever 100 million robotaxis worldwide, that might be an $11 trillion potential.
Hey there, thank you for joining me. If you can, please consider supporting this channel so I can keep it going. It's a lot of work arranging all these amazing interviews. One of the easiest ways is just to click that join button and become a member of the channel. Thank you very much. Let's get brighter. What's your
Um,
guess right now? So, like right now, we have 4 million Teslas out there. I'm not sure how many of them are actually robotaxi ready. I would assume almost, I don't know, at least 80% of them. Let's say 3 million. And then from that, how many would actually turn on robotaxi? That's this year. And then by next year, we're going to already be at 6 million, 8 million, and then the following year 10 million, right? So what are you
yeah,
thinking? Yeah,
with this model, I'm really trying to look out a little further than this year, next year, even maybe the next 5 years, and look
yeah,
at this at scale. What does this business look like? If you could have
yeah,
predicted what Apple would look like many years after the introduction of the iPhone,
yeah,
that would have been helpful as an investor. And so I'm just trying to do that for Tesla and look out a little further. Obviously, it'll take a long time to get a fleet of 20 million, 30 million
yeah.
robotaxis, but one day,
One day.
and how
Okay,
might that look? But
this is
if we
good.
go to the,
Yeah,
if we go to
yeah.
the next slide, you'll see actually that this set of assumptions doesn't work for the fleet operator. Actually, that's a couple of slides
Oops.
from now. This is okay. Yeah, if
I
we go
see.
to that slide. So this is just a visual of what we just talked about. Um,
Mhm,
the x-axis looks at the number of robotaxis in the fleet. And
mhm.
so whatever assumption you'd like to make for the number, then the y-axis shows the potential market value for Tesla. Um, the following slide, Herbert, is looking
Mhm.
at things from the perspective of a fleet operator. So the amount that Tesla has to pay to the fleet operator becomes the income for the fleet operator. That's the 12,600. They have to pay FSD subscription costs. Initially, I've modeled out $2,400 per year. They have to pay to charge the vehicle, and that's an annual charging cost of about $6,000. And then I included some other costs, cleaning, maintenance, etc. There may be some costs that they have to pay to for access to the Robotaxi network and
Hmm.
obtaining data and different things like that. There are some other line items that probably should be included, but again, just being conservative, about $3,000. So total cost of revenue of about 11,500. If you run that through all the way to the bottom line, they have no net income. So for the so
Okay.
for the fleet operator,
Yeah.
receiving 70% of the revenue is not
It's
enough.
not enough.
But the reason is that we didn't include any base fares, and a lot of trips will be short. So I think it's
Gotcha.
important to assume that there will be some minimum cost just to get in a robotaxi, even to drive a mile. And the next screen, we start to explore that. So
Well, let me
here,
make a comment here first of all. So, this first of all, I think you said that all of the numbers you're calculating are two revenues, right? For Tesla, which is just the cost of FSD and then the per mile. But there might be other revenue, right? Like, could there not be entertainment?
absolutely, I didn't even try to
Well,
attempt
yeah,
to model that, but absolutely, that will be
advertisement. Yeah,
another revenue item, definitely.
like what if the fleet owner gets all of the advertisements? I mean, if all you did was bus ad, like the bus ads, you would have that inside the car or something like that.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. That might be another revenue, opportunity that the fleet operator and Tesla share in some way.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, including then an assumption for a base
Mm-hmm.
fare per trip of $2.50 just to get in the
Yeah.
car. And if it's 4 people that get in the car, that's still the cost. It's not per person. So, again, all the assumptions are the same except that $2.50. And if we run that through, the FSD and Robotaxi revenue now go to $34,000. And you can see that the net income to Tesla on the green line is
Mm-hmm.
about 5,500 and a net margin of about 16%. And then following over to the following screen for the fleet operator, now suddenly their economics have dramatically improved. They've gone
Mm-hmm.
from making no money
Okay.
to having a net margin of about 32% or making $7,000 per vehicle
Per vehicle per year.
per year.
That's huge. Just that 250 per drive. And what's
Yes.
the how far do was the average? What's the local miles that most people
The
take
assumption was
ride
10,
hail?
10 miles per
Mm,
ride and 16 trips per day per vehicle.
okay, and that's
So
what
still
Uber.
still pretty
What does
low.
Uber charge? You said 30 cents here. What would Uber's current be?
I'm not uh, completely familiar with Uber's rates, but I know that they're a lot higher than this.
I
You're
think they're
probably
two
looking at
dollars.
a dollar or two per mile,
Yeah,
perhaps more in some
I think so.
cases. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously they went through significant incentives, and that's why they've been out of not making any money for 12 plus years, and only just last year started to make money.
Hmm.
um, in this case,
Now,
wow, that 7 grand a year is huge for the robotaxi fleet owner. If it's all just 250, why wouldn't you do a 250 flat fee plus per mile, 30 cents per mile? That doesn't seem terribly
right,
onerous.
and I think it's highly unlikely that it's 250 flat across the board. I think there are a number of factors that might go into that. So that might be an average or
Mhm.
some very different number, but it might be based on demand. If demand is high, then that base fare may
Yeah,
go up,
yeah.
and so on. There's a whole different number of factors. But what this brings to light for me is that now it's tilted in the fleet operators side versus Tesla. Tesla's net margin here was 16%, and the fleet operators is now 32.
Hmm.
So now I ask the question, so where should FSD pricing be to
Hmm.
bring the net margin of both parties in line?
Okay.
And so exploring that on this slide, move the FSD monthly subscription cost up to $500 a month.
Yeah, and we've heard Elon say that this 200 per month and this 15,000, those are now it's going to go up because if it's all robotaxi, it's going to be a higher price. It's very likely.
That's right, and we just saw this here through the model. Why? If the fleet operators are making more money than Tesla, then it tells me that Tesla is adding more value and Tesla probably should take their share of that.
Mhm.
And so if I bump up the FSD revenue to $500 a month, Tesla's revenue now per vehicle per year is $38,000.
No, there's something wrong. No way.
Right, and that's the only assumption that I've changed here.
Holy cow.
Right.
Okay.
And
Then
if you follow that through to the next
yeah,
slide, you'll see
it
now
must
that
ruin. Yeah.
the net margin now is 20%, and the net income is close to $8,000 per vehicle per
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
Applying that valuation multiple of 30, and again, you can use whatever number you're comfortable with, but for the
Comes down.
illustrative purposes here, 30 gives you a value to Tesla in terms of increasing the value of the company, $236,000 per robotaxi vehicle on the road.
And if they have a million robotaxis, that's $236 billion of market cap or size.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And then finally, how does this look for the fleet operator? Well,
Mhm.
interesting, their net margin's about 20% as well. So we finally found an equilibrium
Yes.
where both
Good.
parties are making a similar margin. Tesla's
Yeah.
making more money, but they're making a similar profit margin.
Gotcha.
So
Oh my gosh.
where that comes out and the final balance obviously remains to be seen. But at least for me, I think we can see the levers that are at play. Um, Tesla will have to do a lot to seed the network, to create the network in different cities and different areas. And so there may be some other costs initially. And I think the fair price will be quite a bit higher than 30 cents initially as well.
Agreed. And now Elon was interviewed by Tesla owner Silicon Valley about a year ago now, I think. And he was asked about the fleet managers, and he's called them, we're very likely going to need fleet managers, or like shepherds, he called them, somebody to manage the fleet, like you said, washing the cars and so forth. So he needs to motivate not only car owners like me, but also the fleet managers to get on board, spread the network just like Uber did, where they really motivated the drivers significantly at the beginning, not making as much profit. Um, and so that's very likely, right? They want to make sure that the fleet managers make money. I'm glad that you did this because I don't know of anyone else who's ever done the both sides of it. Not only what Tesla will make, but also what the economics look like for the fleet manager. And so I like what you did there.
The other thing too, Herbert, that's interesting that this brings to light is if you look at the cost of revenue here for the fleet manager, the fleet owner,
Mm-hmm.
a big chunk of the expenses will be the charging cost.
Right?
So fleet operators are going to be highly incentivized to find the lowest cost ways of charging the vehicles, right?
Setting
And
up a
so that,
supercharger.
well, or whatever, or solar, or whatever it is,
Right.
kind of like how Bitcoin miners are incentivized to
Yes.
find the lowest cost of energy, successful fleet operators will be under the same sort of
Yes.
competitive pressure to do that as well.
But if you do manage and get mega packs and solar, then doesn't that like completely erase your cost? Not, I mean, completely
It
erase, but significantly, right? Massive,
There's certainly
just from the sun.
significant capital costs, but yes, maybe over time, the actual cost to charge, I assumed, 15 cents per kilowatt hour, and maybe
Yeah,
that ends up being way too high for many fleet operators.
gotcha.
It's
That's
certainly
something.
a scale business, and I think that a lot of individuals may choose to allow their car to be available to a fleet operator, and that they will get a cut
Yeah,
of the fleet operator's revenue.
for sure. I That's going to be a killer. Um, so tell me more about on the Tesla side of it. So let's go back to that. And
Mhm.
on the Tesla side of it, we already kind of hinted at that this would not take it. This is just those two revenue line items, which is strict FSD and strict subscription or per mile cost. What are the other ways that Tesla could make money? I've seen you say that maybe the insurance, supercharger, service. Yeah, what are the ways that they could make money on Robotaxi?
Well, I think the entertainment side of things, I think, is an interesting one to explore. Um, Once robotaxis are in operation, the vehicle becomes kind of a mobile iPhone. And so, is there an app store? What kind of advertising opportunities are available at that point as well. And with the numbers of robotaxis that could be rolling around the world one day, that could be a fairly significant source of revenue for them.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't have to drive and I'm even facing the screen all the time in the
That's
car,
right.
I don't know if I'm there for an hour, I'm watching a movie, that's significant. And then I think with the App Store, I've been playing around with this idea like what kinds of apps could there be? But there could be like McDonald's would pay Tesla and the car would, you know, drive you to McDonald's, do the
Hmm.
transaction, advertise to the people who you're near, like this local, whatever the local area is, and they can say, "Yeah, do you want to go here? Because we could take a quick 5 minute detour if you wanted to, and buy this." And then, I don't know. It's interesting. Like there could be all sorts of because it's Robotaxi. You don't need to, the car can take you there and maybe even conduct a transaction.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of sort of location-based opportunities.
Yeah,
The passengers in the car may say, "We're hungry," and the car could give you some ideas about where to go. And I
and then they
suppose,
bid. They bid. Yeah.
right, right, potentially, absolutely, the restaurants are bidding for that traffic. Absolutely, there could be some opportunities like that. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and then you thought that and then the other thing you just mentioned, which I never even thought about, is that the fleet managers are likely going to maybe get superchargers, maybe get the solar. They might set up a supercharging network. They likely will. One of the things about Tesla Semi that I've been exploring as I interview folks is that it's when you
Mhm,
sell Semi to Pepsi or other major corporations, it's not a how many trucks are you going to buy? It's how many trucks are you going to buy? How many superchargers, mega packs, how many solar are you going to want us to install? Because they're going to
mhm.
want to charge these regularly every night, and like you said, lower cost. So very similar with the fleet managers. Hadn't really thought about that, but so you see these fleet managers not. It's going to be at scale. It's not going to be these onesie twosie people. I'm going to get a cut by just renting it out, but the fleet manager will make most of the money. Do you think? Have you done that analysis? Like, how much will I make as a consumer?
I ha I haven't yet, that's another avenue to explore. Um, I think I need to do a little bit more work on what it looks like for the fleet operators. I've done this initial modeling, but certainly there are some other expenses. There are insurance costs, and I've sort of built that into the other operating costs at this point, but there's a number of things I think that are worth exploring, perhaps in more detail. But one thing that I'm pretty certain about is the fleet operators, the ones that can achieve scale, will do the best. Just like
Yeah.
today, when rental cars first became a thing, there were probably thousands of rental car operators, and over time, scale mattered in that business, and I
Right.
think it'll be similar for this as well.
Well, I mean, if Uber and Lyft have proven in the ride hail business that they're now making money, although it took them decades to get here,
Mhm,
but they have the cost of gas. Well, the operator, the driver, has to pay the cost of gas, and then they have the cost of insurance. They have the cost of maintenance, and then that's a driver, and then Uber themselves, they had they said you have to pay the driver, and you have to pay the gas.
mhm,
Without those two needing to be done, it must be profitable. I mean, that's just the thinking. What is there any
mhm.
additional expenses that I haven't thought about compared to Uber because you're doing an EV and you're doing Robotaxi? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, I haven't thought that deeply about it yet, Herbert. There may be some additional things, but I think there are definitely some cost savings that are pretty large. Not having a human in the car is a huge one.
And then the
It
advertisement and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it allows the car to be utilized that much more, and so on. So there's a number of tremendous benefits there. Yep,
Okay. Well, you got lots of work to do. You did
I do.
tremendous amount of work. I want you to work out for me. The next step is how much would the advertising and entertainment be? I'm just very curious because I mean, it's like Netflix, but people say, "Oh, but really? I mean, if there's only a million cars, how many minutes do people spend in the cars? Is that enough to make money? You know, is that enough people or do you need like 20, 30 million people in cars for you to actually start, actually have a entertainment um, you know revenue? I
Yeah, there's
tend to
that,
go
and
there.
also depends on the length of the trip. If the trip is short, then you can't watch much more than TikTok videos.
Yeah.
If the trip is longer, then you can watch a Netflix movie. So there's different aspects to it.
Which of the assumptions that you've made do you think is the most critical, and which ones do you think that you would pose to the audience here of what they think they should tweak?
Yeah, I think it's a blend of the cost per mile, the base fare, and the FSD cost. I think those are the three variables that interplay, and I think you can construct any number of scenarios around those. Of course, your assumptions about the usage of the car is key as well, and I think I've been reasonably conservative with that. The vehicle on any given day is 28% of the time is producing revenue, so the rest of the time is just downtime or traveling between revenue producing trips. Um, because when a robotaxi drops off a passenger, it's not potentially not immediately picking up another passenger, unless it's making a run to an airport or something. So there's a lot of downtime, and I think your assumptions about that and how the car can be utilized in any given day um, make a big difference. Um, yeah, I think those are the key variables.
Okay. And I saw here that you said that based on today's fleet size, the annual potential FSD revenue is 11 billion. Is that assuming 100% of cars will now buy FSD, or what percentage of cars will buy it?
Yeah, just based on the number of cars that are in the fleet today, about 4.5 million or 4.4 million.
If all of them bought FSD?
If all of them did, and again, that's I'm not making a prediction. I'm not saying that they should, but
Yeah.
certainly from an economic perspective,
Yeah.
if they are FSD ready, and not all of them are, there's a real economic incentive to do so because now
What's
people
your
can
guess?
turn.
Yeah. I
Um,
would
it's going to
say,
happen over time. It's going to happen over time. I think part of it is there may be people in certain markets that want to, but yet the
yeah.
robotaxi network isn't fully formed yet, and they can't really, they can't make much money because the network hasn't been built out.
Yeah.
And there may be other markets that where the robotaxi network is flourishing, and people then start to hear about how much money they can make by putting their car in a fleet.
Okay.
And many people will probably purchase vehicles for that very purpose.
All right. And then the other numbers you said is that based on today's fleet size, $31 billion annual potential revenue, FSD plus autonomy. And then by 2035, $895 billion annual revenue. Again, these are probably the optimistic numbers, or based on what we just said. Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything goes
I
right.
wanted to get away from putting a time frame on much of
Mm.
this and just look at this on a per vehicle basis, and then allow people to apply their own assumption for how many vehicles might be in a fleet at any given point in time.
Yeah.
I don't know when this is going to happen, but I'm pretty confident that it is going to happen. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 2 years? Is it longer? That remains to be seen.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think everybody's minds have changed in just the last month, realizing now with FSD version 12 is almost 100% end-to-end neural
Mhm.
network. It's no longer coded uh, individual edge case. And then two, they're saying now that it's all compute constrained, and they've just launched another 10,000 NVIDIA clusters. All that is going to accelerate everything. And so your analysis is very timely because people are going to believe it now. This is not just pie in the sky. If you had like Ark Invest, they were showing these numbers 5 years ago, and people were like, "Yeah, whatever,"
Mhm.
and they discount it. But now this could actually be real.
Yeah, I think we truly are on the cusp of beginning to see a robotaxi network in operation, and certainly other companies now have autonomous vehicles operating in different cities with very different approaches, and so people are starting to realize that this is happening.
Awesome, wonderful. So that's the Cern model. I love that you called it that. Tell me again what the Cern stands for.
Well, Cern is my name, and so I
Yes.
was just having some fun with the name of the model. I suppose instead of conceived, I could have called it conceited estimate of robotaxi, but I settled on that. So I was having some fun with
Well,
that one. It's the
estimate of
next
robotaxi
model.
network. Yeah.
Yep.
Bots
It's the
never.
next model that sort of blew me away when I started working on the bots model.
Okay, let's do that. So bots model stands for Boundless
Uh,
Optimus Transformation at Scale. You're great with naming. I love it. Okay,
yeah.
show me your thinking there. That bots model. This is fantastic. Okay, let's do this.
So this one is actually quite a bit different than the Robotaxi model, and a couple of key things are very different. One is I assume that Tesla would not sell bots, and the reason is that they
Right.
want to
Agreed.
maintain control over what the bots are used for. Tesla does not want to see somebody put together a bot army, and Tesla probably doesn't want to see the bots used for various other things. For example, they might make for interesting people standing on the side of the road holding signs for for advertising to get attention. I'm guessing that Tesla wouldn't want to see the bots being used for that purpose, at least initially. So there's different things like that, and so I'm assuming that Tesla leases out the bot, and as we'll see in a minute, I'm also assuming that the bots will be heavily taxed, and we'll come to that in a second. But if we take a look at the base assumptions for revenue, I assume that each bot per month would be rented out at $3,600. Now, it sounds like a lot on
That's
a
a lot.
monthly basis,
Hmm.
but if each bot works 16 hours a day,
Hmm.
then it costs you 750 per hour. Now, to have a bot in my house doing dishes and folding laundry, maybe not at that price, but in manufacturing capacity or an assembly line or a fast food restaurant or any number of other applications, this would be a bargain. And the bot can work one, two, or three shifts.
Hmm.
So if you consider that, then this actually would be pretty inexpensive. There'd be tremendous savings.
Exactly.
So just using these numbers, each bot would generate $43,000 a year in revenue for Tesla. Now,
Yeah,
if we ex
the 750 per hour is very reasonable. Just looking at that number, that's way lower than the minimum wage, and so that looks right. It's half the minimum wage, which looks right. In fact, I would argue that that might actually be conservative. So when
yeah,
you said 3,600, at first I thought, yeah, that's 40,000 a year. That's a lot. But then when you break it down, because like you said, 16 hours a day, how many hours per week, and it's only 750. There you go. That makes sense.
yeah, and again, I'm not suggesting that this is the price for all the bots. Some of them may be less, some of them may be more. This is kind of an average price.
Right.
So maybe for certain applications at scale, Tesla leases them out for less, and other
Mhm.
applications at scale, Tesla leases them out for more. So anything that involves risk to the bot, wear and tear, exposure to chemicals or other hazardous materials, Tesla will charge more for that,
What do you
right?
think about the skills marketplace? Have you heard of that?
No, I have not.
Skills marketplace is this concept of you buy the bot, you lease it on a monthly basis, but based on skill, you have to buy it. So if you wanted to wash your dishes, okay, they'll charge you $20. You can get that skill. But then if you wanted to weld a, something, they're going to charge you $1,000 a month, whatever, like a certain skill they can charge extra for.
Yeah, I think that's possible. For me, it's more of what's the risk? What's the wear and tear and the damage potential for the bot? And
Right.
I think that maybe more drives the revenue more,
Yes.
perhaps.
Agreed.
Um, Although who knows? I mean, as you'll see, there's enough profit in bots that Tesla doesn't have to, maximize every opportunity.
Okay.
Um,
Well, let's pause there for a second. I mean, 750 revenue per hour per bot sounds very low, but $43,000 per bot per year. That's amazing. That is per year. That's not just, like you sold one car for 50 grand. This is $43,000 per year on a leased basis.
that's right. And with bots, you don't have to make 401k contributions. You don't have to pay for their health care. There's a
Yeah.
lot of savings for potential users
Okay,
of
good point.
bots,
Yeah, that's a
right?
good point. I mean, if I thought about the whole cost of an employee, it's well more than 43,000, even the most basic, minimum wage employee, because of all the things you just said.
Right, and they're not working 16 hours a day. It would probably cost you a couple of employees to get there. And 16
That's
hours a
right.
day, by the way, I think is probably conservative. That's
Yes.
that's 8 hours of downtime, and probably that's not the case. Probably the bot will be going for probably at least 20 hours a day, perhaps
Exactly.
more.
Yeah. Especially now with the new wireless purchase of that wireless company that they bought, where the bot can be continuously charged by standing on a mat.
Yes. Yep. So if we look at the cost of the bots, I'm assuming it costs $15,000 to make it, which I think is pretty conservative. I've seen numbers much
Very
lower than
high.
that. Yeah.
Yes. Most people are saying 10 grand or less, especially at scale, especially with Tesla making factories, and especially if bots make bots.
Hmm. That's right.
People are thinking their calculation of the actuators and the actual cost of it. The people I've interviewed said less than 10. So this is
Hmm.
good. 15. Okay.
Yeah. And if the average bot lasts about 10 years, so the capital cost per year is about $1,500. And I'm assuming annual maintenance costs on a per bot basis of 12.5% of the original cost. So that's another $1,875 a year of maintenance cost. And again, that's every year for 10 years. That's right. So it's
Mhm.
a good chunk of money over the 10-year life of the bot. And then just other costs of another 10%. So total cost of revenue per bot is about $7,700 a year. And that makes the gross profit at about $35,500, 82% profit margins on a bot, gross margins. So
Okay.
before anybody gets up in arms about, Tesla's making too much money on these, if you turn to the next image, I think it's important to consider taxes. And I'm introducing something here I think that will ultimately become pretty important.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not suggesting this is my idea. Plenty of people have talked about this, but I think the robot will need to pay a significant amount of tax, particularly if it displaces human workers.
Mhm.
And I assumed a robot tax rate of 33%.
Wow. Yep.
So
That's good.
between this and the corporate tax rate, the government actually would make more money per bot than Tesla would. So so
Sounds
Tesla's
right.
net income, yeah, Tesla's net income is 12,600. The robot tax generates 14,000, and then another $3,500 in income tax, corporate income tax. So the government is making more money. So the government should be, under this scenario, this set of assumptions, very excited to see bots. And I think what will happen is various governments around the world are going to compete heavily to entice Tesla to make, build, and operate bots in their countries, in their states, etc. Because the revenue potential under an assumption like this is pretty enormous.
So the robot tax is 14,000 per bot, which they could, if you got one bot per citizen, that could be enough to pay for the displacement of that citizen.
That's right. So
A little
just
bit.
following through the model to compare this to the the Robotaxi, with a net income of 12,700 per bot, applying a 30 multiple to that, you're getting a value to Tesla for each bot produced of $380,000. And again, I think using pretty conservative assumptions with a hefty tax rate that's been applied to this. Initially, I don't think there'll be much taxes at all, but over time, as more workers are displaced, I think that governments around the world will start taxing robots if they aren't already. The rate remains to be seen, but of course, like any tax jurisdiction, there's competition. And so Tesla will go to those places where they're treated the best.
I'm glad that you put it in, first of all, versus not putting it in. That would be irresponsible. But
If I didn't put it in, these numbers are absolutely crazy.
you're just trying not to be so psycho crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I've never
want
seen a
to.
business with a 60% profit margin, and that's the net margin, and that's what it would be, something around that line, that range. Um,
And
that
yeah.
that did feel unlikely, and I think Tesla would freely admit. Again, I'm not speaking for Tesla, I don't represent Tesla, but I would imagine that they would welcome an opportunity to contribute
Yeah.
in this way.
And then again, a lot more work to be done to try to figure out the average, which jobs would be replaced, what are their costs currently today with employees, what is the cost for the bot to learn that skill, and like you said, repair issues. Um,
Hmm.
but if you assume that the bot can do a lot of menial physical work, that's that's I think at the end of the day, it makes just too many of those jobs that it can do. It's just too the bots are too intelligent. They can do almost everything at this point, from what I've seen.
It's only going to get better. Um, Anything that's repetitive, anything that requires lifting and moving, and
Mhm.
even beyond that, eventually they'll be able to do very complex tasks.
So I did a video with Scott Walter, and I showed the video of they had this news organization in China went through Giga Shanghai, and they went through the whole factory, and they had the video of what's happening real time, and you're seeing all these big bots making the cars, but you also see the humans doing these
mhm.
activities. And Scott kept saying, "See that one? See that one? See that one? All of those jobs that those humans are doing can be replaced by the bot." And
That's right,
if
and
Tesla did it for themselves
that's
and they
right.
don't have to, like the savings for themselves is 4 times per employee, is what Scott calculated. And so even if they don't sell it to anybody else, they can like take the first 100,000 bots and use it for themselves.
Mhm.
And the valuation of Tesla will skyrocket because again, the margins will go up, everything.
Scott and I have actually done some work together on that and modeling what that might look like for Tesla in terms of the cost savings.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is everything you've shared here has been vetted by Scott, or he's also spent some time thinking about this.
Yeah, I've shared this with him. I wouldn't say it's been vetted by Scott, but he and I have had some discussions about this. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
And then at the
Wonderful.
bottom of this
Yeah.
image, at different, I'm calling them bot flocks, at different size of the flock, it is possible to have a lot more bots in the world than robotaxis.
Yes.
Um, and so it's conceivable that you could have a billion or more bots ultimately. And this is where Elon has been quoted, and I'm paraphrasing him here. What is an economy if you have unlimited labor? And so at a billion, that's a $380 trillion value to Tesla. Again, a nutty, nutty number that no one would dare talk about. And again, this is not a prediction, but it flows through this model at scale. We're looking at a number like that. Now,
380 trillion.
yeah. Now, would anybody apply a 30 valuation multiple? Perhaps not. But even so, apply whatever multiple you want, and you'll still get a pretty nutty number.
And this is 1 billion bots because Elon has said, or as he thought it through, that very likely there's going to be one bot per human. So we've got 8 billion humans. Maybe there's 5 billion bots. Maybe he said there might even be 2 bots per human at some point in the future.
Yeah. Well, you can add another zero on the end of the last line there, then, if that's the case.
More than another zero, because that's
Yeah.
uh, well, okay, so 1 million bots is what you started off with, which is very doable. As we know, this is not like cars. They could produce these bots once they figured out, and they could produce these in scale. Right now, they could make, we're estimating 1.8 million cars per year, right? So
Yeah.
for them
Tesla's
to,
run rate, let's say at the end of the year, producing 2 million vehicles
yeah,
a year. It's taken them
big
20
giant
or so
vehicles.
years to get there. It won't take 20 years for Tesla to have a run rate of 2 million bots per year.
At 10,000 parts per car. It's very complicated.
Hmm.
A bot can be done. So making a million bots seems to me that once they've got the design all figured out and everything like that, should be done within like literally 2 years from now, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. Like, it could be very fast.
Yeah. Again, I hesitate to put time frames around these things, but it is, in my mind, inevitable that one day there will be large fleets of bots. How large, I leave up to anybody that wants to look at this, but just showing the potential at scale for what it could be.
At scale. What do you mean by at scale? Is that a million?
Probably. Certainly 10 million is definitely at scale. Um,
Why does it have to be at scale for this one?
well,
I can get the Robotaxi because it's a network.
yeah. Um, well, this one I think I've been pretty conservative in terms of my cost assumptions, but at scale, you get the benefit of operating leverage. And so, if the cost per bot, may seem low, but at scale, you're looking at a very large dollar number in total. Um, I think though with this bot model, I've been pretty conservative in those assumptions. So the scale
Okay.
probably for bots is probably fairly reasonable.
Yeah. I don't
It doesn't
know if you
require
need
a
to be at
billion
scale.
dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be at scale for bots. I mean, like we've heard Tom Jew say at the investors presentation or maybe the shareholders presentation where he said that Giga Mexico, he expects to have 5,000 bots.
Hmm.
And so even if the cost is double what you estimate, like you said, the margins are so crazy anyways that
Hmm.
cost doesn't matter. And when you factor in a subscription model, it's like one thing I've learned recently. You know how we all thought that Robotaxi, and we all kept saying, "Well, these lidar-based companies, how can they do this? Because it costs so much to outfit a car with lidar." The lidar part actually doesn't make a difference because the
Hmm.
extra cost of the car to outfit with lidar, because it's a subscription revenue over years, it gets spread out, and
Right.
so it's actually not that big of a deal. In the same way with this one, you can have 4 times the cost of building a bot, but that's just 1 year of subscription revenue, and the rest is all
Hmm.
profit at that point. It's like it almost, anyways.
Yeah,
So
I think
mhm,
where the costs matter is where you get a competitive market. So if we assume that Tesla is not the only
right,
provider of humanoid robots at some point. Now, that's an item up for debate, just like the robotaxi is up for debate. Will there be any material competition? There's different approaches, and maybe those approaches work in various geofenced areas, but they don't work generally. And so,
yeah, I
same thing with the bots, right? Can you
mhm,
put a bot anywhere in the world and have it work? But will other companies, and we've seen this already, will other companies train bots for specific tasks in a manufacturing line? And in some sense, that could compete against Tesla.
mhm.
And so their costs are going to matter, right?
Yeah, to that part, I agree with you. I think that there's going to be lots of competitors. So I just reported recently that Google DeepMind had a paper that they produced, that they wrote and published just literally a month ago. Excuse
Hmm.
me, where they took their version of ChatGPT and they were able to teach this bot to do all sorts of activities, and it was emergent behavior. And so,
Hmm.
put this banana in the bowl where all the bananas belong, or put this banana on top of Miley Cyrus, and it's a picture of Miley Cyrus, and it figured it out. Like it didn't need to, be taught specifically what to do.
Hmm.
So there's going to be lots of competitors, and so then it becomes at scale. Who can produce the most bots as fast as
Right.
possible so that you can win the most business as fast as possible?
And as we know, Tesla is very focused on when they design something, they think about how to manufacture it at the same time.
Yeah.
And clearly, we've seen with other companies that has not been a consideration for them as they build products.
Okay.
Um,
So yeah, the at scale part does matter if it's
mhm.
competitive organized. So tell me about
Yep.
this. Finish off your slides here for me.
Yeah, again, this is just the visual of the bots model at various numbers of bots, what that potential um, value is for Tesla, um, given the various assumptions.
On the left column, that is 10,000, or is that thousands? Is that 10 million, or is that 10,000?
Um, those are dollars and billions. So the very top number is 40 trillion on the top
Yeah, no, I see
left,
that, but
top of the
what's
scale.
the on the left column though? 40,000. What's that?
That's again the value in billion. That's billions of dollars. So that's $40 trillion. So the 40,000
Oh,
represents
okay.
forty
So the
trillion
left is
dollars.
same than the right. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm misreading this. So the bottom is the number of bots. Gotcha.
Hmm.
Okay. Gotcha.
So at the far right side, that column of 100 million, at 100 million bots, the bots valuation for Tesla is 38 trillion.
38 trillion.
And that's not,
100
we're not
million
we're not at a
bots.
billion yet. Um, Add another
Gotcha.
zero, you get to a billion bots. That's 380 trillion. It gets absolutely nutty. Again, the Tesla's market share here may not be as big as we think it could be, but what's the
Mhm.
number of bots? What's the potential for the number of bots in the world? If it is something like 10 billion or more, it's conceivable that Tesla has a billion bots in the world
Well,
at some point.
so yeah, the way, I guess as I think about it, so who else can manufacture bots at scale? And there's going to be some companies that can do it, but I think the competitor to Tesla will be, the conglomeration of hundreds of factories against Tesla building these factories to produce this.
Hmm.
And I think the one benefit that Tesla might have would be when one bot learns one thing, everybody learns it. So that network matters in that case.
Hmm.
Um, I bet it's going to end up much like Apple versus Android, where Android is a splintering of fragmentation of all these different companies all adopting the for Android software. And then you got one, which is both hardware and software.
I think that's
It's going to be
possible, although I think we may be looking at an entirely new paradigm. We're talking about real world AI, and is there room for two players in that kind of world? Is anybody else doing real world AI like Tesla is with autonomous vehicles and bots? If they are, then it could be a two, three, four horse race. If they're not, then their applications are going to be limited, and they're going to be playing in different markets potentially, or only competing against Tesla in the markets that they have been focused on and trained their bots for. And so I don't know that we know yet what the real world AI paradigm looks like for companies. This is a brand new thing. Is it winner take all? It sure seems like it.
I don't think so. Um, and just because both Google DeepMind and OpenAI have shown that you can take large language models and apply video training, and
Hmm.
then they're able to be intelligent with emergent behavior, to reason just by looking at video. And so,
Right.
but then Scott and others are explaining to me that it's one thing to have the intelligence, the other thing to actually have the physical manifestation of the bot grabbing
Hmm.
something and knowing the feel of it and knowing how to grab it. Those things you need to teach, but I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily 100% convinced as I used to be that you said vision, real world AI is what is going to just make it that no one else can do this, right? And whether or not, like
Yeah.
you said, it's going to be restricted to specific tasks that they could do. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be who can produce the most bots as fast as they can. That's going to win the
Yeah,
market.
I think it's those two components. So it's who is willing to invest the billions of dollars necessary in the compute, right, to make this work. And so far on autonomous vehicles, we haven't seen anybody else
Right.
making
Agreed
the
with that one.
investment that Tesla is.
Yeah.
So they have to also make a similar investment probably in the bots world. Now Tesla can take what they're doing with their vehicles and apply some of that to the bot. Certainly the approach is the same. So is anybody else going to step up to the plate and compete with Tesla in the training efforts and the cost and the billions of dollars it takes to get there? Um, if they do, then yes, it can become a two horse, three horse race. If they don't, then I think how is anybody going to compete against this effort?
Yeah.
I
So,
as a
yeah.
consumer, I hope there is competition. I think that's a healthy thing, right? I hope that other people do step up to the plate and make those investments. Whether that's who knows, any number of companies could do it, or as you said, a conglomerate of companies come together and work on this together.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well,
that
a
that
lot of
that
research.
brings about its own challenges. Yes, right.
Okay. So let's finish off the slides here. You've got this one, and then you got the final that compares the two models together. So tell me what this is about.
Yeah, this one just shows for the renter of the bot. The top
Mhm.
part of the table here shows the annual rental cost 43,200, and then how much it would cost to charge it per year.
Mm.
assuming it works 16 hours a day, and I just assume it charges twice a day. So the daily cost is $1.20. Annual charging costs $438. So the charging component is pretty minimal. It's much bigger for the Robotaxi
Gotcha.
business.
But you already assumed that it was going to be all leased, which I absolutely love your reasoning why it's only going to be Tesla will lease it. They won't be selling this. I agree. I mean, this doesn't make sense that they will sell this ever,
Yeah, I think if they do, they run the risk of people using the bots in ways
right?
that they don't want,
Yeah,
whether it's military reasons or other reasons, other crazy reasons. People dropping bots off of bridges just to watch them smash or whatever it is. I don't think that Tesla would want to see that, and so I think they want to maintain probably more control over the
right.
use of the bot and be able to repossess them at any time should they see some activity that they don't want to see.
Yeah,
The bottom part of this spreadsheet here shows the benefit to governments.
yeah.
So the robot tax receipts at a million bots, you're looking at $14 billion. At a billion bots, you're looking at $14 trillion of tax receipts. And if you add in the corporate income tax from what Tesla makes in profits, it's more like 17 trillion. So the opportunity for tax revenue is sizable as well, and that shouldn't be lost in this discussion. It's an important part of this.
Absolutely.
There will be a lot of people that will lose their jobs, and I think that governments are going to need to find ways to replace the tax revenue from lost taxes on those wages, and also help
Mm.
those people perhaps retrain themselves and so on. So there'll be a tremendous need for additional tax revenue.
Do you think Tesla themselves would take it on to compensate some of the lost revenue, the lost jobs? Because Elon keeps talking about the job. If you can create all these bots that create all these products, and he said economy is really the products and services. If you can make these products
Mhm.
and services so much cheaper because bots are creating them, the price of grapes would dramatically fall because you had bots pick the grapes or process them, package and
Yep.
deliver them. Is that enough that the consumers benefit from reduced prices of products and services? Or do you think that Tesla might do some sort of, I'll lease the bots, but then I will, take on some of the social coverage of lost revenue, lost income? I
Yeah,
don't know if
there's
that makes
certainly
sense.
a good argument to be made that potentially the prices of a whole bunch of things come down, and so people don't need to make as much money to afford these items anymore.
Yeah.
That is true. But if you still have people working and making money, then that income disparity becomes even bigger than it is today, potentially. Now, obviously this is things will change dramatically with bots and with AI. White collar and blue collar jobs are just as much at risk. So it may well be that with the advancements in AI, that actually the biggest impact is felt at higher income white collar jobs, traditional white collar work. Um, and it may take a lot longer for bots to replace some of the more difficult blue collar jobs. Um, that remains to be seen. And there are some. If I think about Tesla building a new factory in Mexico to build the next generation vehicle, they're not displacing workers if they put bots in the factory because there's no one working in the factory yet. So it's hard to measure necessarily how many jobs have been lost. And there's certainly a lot of companies today. Amazon, for example, my understanding is they're the largest user of industrial robots of any company. How many workers have lost their jobs because of that? So it's a hard thing to measure. And so I think that I hope that companies will have a dialogue with governments around, we clearly are going to need to replace some lost income tax revenue, another tax revenue. Um, so it's definitely a fluid situation that's going to take years to come to some level that makes sense, and it's going to be different for every tax jurisdiction in the world. Some some countries, I think, will want to be very aggressive and offer low taxes on robots to develop that market. and other places may find it more difficult to do so because of the potential lost jobs. I think it's too difficult to sit here today and say how that's going to pan out, but it's going to be very interesting to watch that.
Yeah. Uh, AI is replacing white collar jobs. Bots are doing this. At the end of the day, most usually technological advances for productivity generates more jobs. I'm not
Yeah,
sure this is going to be the case with this situation because uh, this is a little different than in the past.
it is.
But
It is, and I think if in aggregate we as a human race on the planet are able to produce more, then living standards should rise for everybody in theory,
yeah,
as long
well,
as the profit from all this doesn't just go to a few people. And so that's where I think significant taxes and so on come in to play. But like you said, it's a combination too of probably reducing prices of things as we're able to make them more cheaply. It's all that together, and
if there was just
it's
the yeah, if it was just the AI revolution by itself, I'd be very scared. But because the bots
you
are
know.
coming in as well, I feel like I don't like you said, I may not need a job, and yet
Hmm.
I'm going to be okay. Like I may not have to pay for a lot of things. I don't. We'll see how it all translate. But
Mm.
so let's wrap it up with your combination of these two. This is the bot on the left and the Robotaxi on the right. Why did you put these together?
Yeah, they're not directly comparable, but they are worth looking at side by side. Both of these businesses are new businesses that we don't yet see in the world. They don't exist. And so what I've tried to do is create models for both of them, have a dialogue, test the models, test the assumptions, look at different scenarios. But looking at the two side by side, it is apparent that the opportunity with bots is an order of magnitude or more bigger than the opportunity with autonomous vehicles. And we're probably on the cusp of autonomous vehicles today, next couple of years, whatever time frame you want to use. And that's great, that's exciting. But there is another massive S curve behind that that most people, if very few people believe or understand
Mhm.
autonomy, as Elon said at the outset, right? You understand, but few do. Even less understand the potential for bots. And so I just wanted to start shedding a little bit of the light on that opportunity. And again, I'm not suggesting that I have all the answers or that I've modeled this perfectly. I probably haven't. Maybe the business model is completely different than this, but the opportunity is there and it's going to be rather large.
Well, that was a lot of fun, sir. And thank you for doing that. I do appreciate that you've created these models. You've already said almost every assumption is wrong. Every model is going to be wrong. You tried not to forecast. You're trying to just create a model and let the audience come in and tweak numbers, tweak assumptions. And then you brought up what the assumptions were. There's quite a bit of them. So if you guys want to know what they are, you should follow Cern on his Twitter handle, Cern Basher at CERNBASHER. You should check out his website, brilliantadvice.net. He's a financial wealth manager as well. But this is great that you put the time and effort to put this in. And what we learned today is like you already brought up a couple of points that I hadn't really thought about. And I'm glad you did that. And then, of course, there's more. So I'm expecting you to go back and keep adding to this on both the Robotaxi and the bot. And like you said, both are coming very soon. It's funny how just 2 years ago we all thought that these were like 5 years or 10 years from now. I think most people are now realizing that both these businesses can actually come sooner than we realize. And so you're putting together some framework for us to think about. Um, Appreciate you, sir. Thank you for doing this. That was fun.
Thank you, Herbert. Yeah, I think we're just scratching the surface here. And as we look back on this a few years from now, I think we'll realize how obvious it was with the mistakes that we made. But um, it's certainly very interesting to look forward at this stage. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks,
My
everybody.
pleasure.
Bye bye.